Heaven Official's Blessing. Chapter 33. Audio source: WuXiaWorldAudiobook.com. In the Great Martial Hall, Crown Prince meets Crown Prince. Ling Wen approached the throne, dressed all in black and without a word or smile, drew a line through an item on her memo. My lord, there are a few heavenly officials still on patrol in the mortal realm, unable to return. Jun Wu nodded. They have already reported in. Ling Wen acknowledged the response, and Jun Wu turned to Xie Lian. Xian Le, I'm sure you are curious as to why you have been summoned here today. Xie Lian still had his head bowed. I can guess. However, I had assumed the matter with little General Pei was already settled. Just then, a man's voice rang out. Whether if it's been settled is yet hard to say. The voice that came behind was lyrical, and when Xie Lian turned his head to look, a martial god stepped into the great hall, his hand on the hilt of his sword, and he walked towards the front. When he passed by Xie Lian, he stopped in his step and lifted his lips. Your Royal Highness, I've heard much about you. This martial god looked to be about 26 to 27 years old, graceful and confident in his actions. Looking at his face, Xie Lian thought he looked even more handsome than that statue he saw at Mount Yuzhun, and it's the kind of handsome that could definitely steal hearts. Very much the charming type. Xie Lian didn't respond, and he continued. Our little General Pei has been in your care. I've definitely offended him. Xie Lian thought, and returned the greeting. Please don't trouble yourself over it. I've heard much about you as well. The words, I've heard much about you, were certainly not a lie. In the past few days, Xie Lian skimmed through his scroll, and briefly read through the legends of some of the more famous heavenly officials, and one of them was the Mingguang General Pei Ming. This martial god of the north was skilled in battle, but the most talked about amongst the mortals was stories of his many affairs, good and bad, within one alleys. The good had stories like Pei Ming using copious amounts of gold to help save a pitiful prostitute from the brothels. She fell in love with him and forever remained pure and true to await his return. The bad had stories like Pei Ming crossing thousands of miles to spend a one-night stand with a married woman, etc. etc. On some level, Pei Ming was a powerful man. After reading throughout his stories, Xie Lian thought it was quite unbelievable that after so many years, there was only one Zanji that came out of that way of life. Because Pei Ming was skilled in both battle and in love, many of his rivals and fellows loved cursing him to go die, and even better if he'd die from syphilis. But his life force was tough, and he never got infected with anything even after the many flowers he'd picked. He wouldn't die, and he'd even live longer than most of his fellows. Until finally, one day he lost a battle, and everyone laughed thinking at last it's his end. But then lightning crashed and thunder roared in that moment of danger. He ascended to the heavens. Those who didn't die in his hands probably all died from outrage. After ascension, Pei Ming didn't change his way of life, and the scale of his tales of promiscuity greatly expanded. From fairies and lady officials to female ghosts and demons, as long as they are beautiful, he would pluck them. Nonetheless, his favorite type was still the charming ladies of the mortal realm. Many indecent love stories all had him starring as the main male lead. And if it wasn't for Xie Lian's method of cultivation that demanded purity of body and of mind, he'd probably read a couple of those books just out of curiosity. Thus, other than the martial god that ruled the north, the mortal realm also worshipped him as the god of love. Even some officials would secretly pray to him should they bump into him in the heavens, hoping for some fortune in love. It had to be said that although similar, that title was definitely better than Feng Xin's unwarranted title, Zhu Yang. All the heavenly officials present in the hall knew in their hearts what each of the I've heard much about you meant, and many roared with laughter in their heads. After the pleasantries, Xie Lian said, what does General Pei mean by not necessarily settled? Single quote. Pei Ming snapped his fingers, and a corpse floating in midair suddenly appeared in the middle of the great hall. Strictly speaking, this floating body was an empty shell. It had no soul, completely empty on the inside, and covered in blood from head to toe, so it was no different than a corpse. To have something of this sort appear before an elegant crowd like the heavenly officials was a shock. Junwoo didn't comment and only watched. His throne may be high, but when he peered down to the officials, he did not give off an air of condescension. Majestic and dignified, but not above all. General Pei, what's the meaning of this? Xie Lian asked. A few days ago I went to visit little General Pei, and he mentioned something interesting, Pei Ming replied. The moment he opened his mouth, Xie Lian could guess what he was going to say. Pei Ming paced around Xie Lian and smiled. I'm quite familiar with little General Pei's ability. Even if his clone's powers are reduced and nowhere near the same as his true self, it's still quite competent. It's still capable to fight evenly without menace. However, he told me there was a mortal that was able to beat him to the point where he had to relent. Now isn't that interesting? Pei Ming continued. I questioned him, and he told me more. Apparently, at the time, there was a red-clothed young man beside your Royal Highness while you were at the Banyu Pass. Hearing the words, red-clothed, made all the officials present change face. And Pei Ming's following words made them all restless. He said, and this young man, in the dark, was able to eradicate all the menacing Banyu soldiers in a flash. Now, your Royal Highness, might you enlighten us who this red-clothed young man might be? If it wasn't a menace, then it must be a supreme, and one that could kill hundreds of menaces in a flash. A young man dressed in red. Dropping so many hints, anyone could guess where this was going, and who that young man was. Yet no one wanted to be the first to say the name. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead, thought about his words, and said unnaturally, ahem, really? About that, I really don't remember it well. There was also a caravan that was trapped in the Banyu Pass at the time, and we spent a few days together, so maybe it was someone from the caravan. Pei Ming smiled. Your Royal Highness, your words are very different than that of Pei Su. According to little General Pei, you and that young man were abnormally close, not like someone you've only met for just a few days. How can you not remember? No, you're wrong. That was the truth. It really was only just a few days, Xie Lian thought. Nevertheless, his expression gave nothing away. Just then, from the sidelines, a white-clad cultivator casually waved his whisk and said, General Pei, you've only heard little General Pei's side of the story. Little General Pei has committed a crime. He's currently in detention, soon to be exiled. Whether if his words are believable needs to be discerned. No. Then we shall see if General Nanyang and General Zanzhen can give us a hand, Pei Ming replied. Following his line of sight, Xie Lian found Feng Xin and Mu Qing standing separately on the southwest and southeast corners of the hall. Feng Xin still looked the same as in his memories. Standing tall and straight, his eyes determined, and brows always slightly furrowed, as if there's always something annoying him, but really he's not annoyed at all. Mu Qing, on the other hand, was somewhat different than what he remembered. Although his face was still pale as chalk without much blood, his thin lips pursed, his eyes half-lidded, yet there's a cool air of "don't talk to me" surrounding him. He stood with his arms crossed, a finger on his right hand tapping his left elbow softly, looking like he was either at ease, or more like he was scheming something. The two were definitely good-looking men, but each had their own flaws. Hearing Pei Ming calling them out, they both looked towards Junwoo at the same time. It was only until Junwoo nodded his head slightly before they stepped forward slowly. This was the first time since Xie Lian's third ascension that he'd come face to face with the two of them. He could feel all the eyes on them going wilder. Wild was inevitable. The Great Martial Hall was the #1 martial palace of heaven. Non-heavenly officials had no entry rights to discuss matters. The first time the Crown Prince of Xi'an ascended, Feng Xin and Mu Qing were his generals. At the time, they were only low-ranking officials from the middle court without even the right to run errands within the Great Martial Hall. And now, not only could the junior officials then now stand in the hall, their rankings were even higher than that of their old master. Truly a turn of fate. There was no way this wasn't going to be an exciting spectacle. The three of them looked at each other, eyes blindly going all over the place, glimpsing at each other but pretending not to care, not knowing what each other was thinking. However, Xie Lian could roughly guess why Pei Ming had called them out to help. As suspected, Pei Ming said, General Nanyang and General Sun Zhen had both fought with Hua Cheng before. I'm sure they have the authority to speak on the weapon of that person. So the point of bringing forth the empty shell of Zhao was for all to inspect its wounds. Feng Xin and Mu Qing slowly approached the floating body. Xie Lian himself took a few steps forward to take a look, but there was so much blood darkened to black spots, it was hard to tell anything. The other two, face austere, took their time in their inspection. Finally, they raised their heads and glanced at each other. Neither of them wanted to speak first. Ling Wen watched them fight each other with their eyes but refusing to speak, and couldn't take it anymore. She cleared her throat from next to the throne. Generals. Conclusion? Finally, it was Feng Xin who spoke first. With a low voice, he said, It's him. The scimitar Yiming, Mu Qing added. The scimitar Yiming was the very same freakish weapon Hua Cheng had used when he singularly challenged the 33 officials and beat them to a pulp, decimating their soul and dignity. Within the Great Martial Hall, the heavenly officials started talking to each other under their breaths, the eyes watching Xie Lian unreadable. Pei Ming had attained his objective. If the red-clothed young man that traveled next to your Royal Highness was the same as that person, then this whole matter must be re-examined. The white-clad cultivator from before spoke up again. General Pei, are you saying His Royal Highness the Crown Prince of Xi'an Le colluded with a Supreme Ghost King specifically to destroy little General Pei? Both times when that cultivator spoke, he was on Xie Lian's side, so he had to take a look who exactly this curious fellow cultivator was. What he saw was a cultivator with clear, bright eyes. He had a whisk between his arms, a long sword carried on his back, and a folding fan tucked in his white jaded belt. His form was graceful and elegant, his expression spirited. He looked familiar, but Xie Lian couldn't recall when he had met anyone like this. Pei Ming glanced at him too and smiled. Qingshan, don't fight me on this time. The white-clad cultivator curtsied and said, Oh, did I misunderstand? Sorry, General Pei, don't take it to heart. My fault, my fault. The gesture was very obviously fake. Pei Ming's smile was one that an elder would wear when they didn't want to deal with children. He shook his head and waved, withdrawing the floating empty shell that was a Zhao. He turned around and continued his argument. It may not be collusion. Only, that person is powerful and wicked. Who knows if he might have used deceptive tricks to blind the Royal Highness. Therefore, I'm afraid the matter needs to be redetermined. It'd be great if your Royal Highness could bring forth the head priestess of Banyu you've taken away for further questioning. The intention behind the request was to make Hua Cheng out to be the real perpetrator behind the chaos of Banyu Pass. If Banyu was to be brought in before the Heavenly Court for interrogation, then the end results would be vastly different. Xie Lian gave a small smile. General Pei, even if you don't believe me, you should still believe in the Windmaster. Back in the Sinner's Pit, little General Pei admitted to the crime of luring passers-by to the Banyu Pass with his clone, and the Windmaster heard everything. Pei Ming glanced at the white-clad cultivator. Xie Lian continued. Besides, since we're both here at the Great Martial Hall, you can very well ask His Majesty whether if I have traces of any deceptive spells. All the officials looked to Dun Wu. The great god's expression remained calm and without changing, meaning Xie Lian was cleared. Thus, the officials moved their eyes back to the two. Xie Lian continued. General Pei, let's keep things clear and separate. Let's not talk about whether if the young man I traveled with was watching or not, and even if he was confirmed to be watching, it has nothing to do with what little General Pei had done. His expression was composed and neutral when the name was uttered, but many in the hall had cold shivers run down their backs. Pei Ming watched him steadily and suddenly grinned. He was about to argue and Xie Lian was ready to counter when Junwu spoke up. That's enough. The moment he spoke, Pei Ming stopped his dispute and bowed. Junwu spoke languidly. Since Pei Su had admitted his crimes and they do not differ from Kei Mo's confession, then the matter of the Banyu Pass is settled. After some silence, Pei Ming acknowledged. Yes, my lord. Xie Lian breathed in relief, but Pei Ming continued. But Nanyang and Zanjian have proven that the wounds on that empty shell were indeed inflicted by the scimitar Yi Ming. That is a whole other matter, Junwu replied. Pray your majesty will look into this matter, Pei Ming said. I will naturally investigate. Mingguang and fellow deities have no need for concern. After a pause, Junwu continued. You are all dismissed for today. Xian Le, do you stay? It looked like Xie Lian would be personally interrogated. If that was the case, then Pei Ming had nothing more to say. Xie Lian had nothing more to say either, and bowed his head. Yes, my lord. Dismissed, the other heavenly officials exited in their groups of 2 or 3s. When Feng Xin passed by, he glanced at Xie Lian looking as if he had something to say, but stopped himself. Xie Lian smiled at him and he was startled before hurrying away. Mu Qing, however, walked past never sparing a look, as if Xie Lian never existed. The white-clad cultivator walked over with his whisk in hand and a huge smile ready to speak when Pei Ming, one hand on his hilt another rubbing his nose, walked over too and said helplessly, Qingshan, for your brother's sake, can you not stir up trouble? The smile disappeared from the face of that white-clad cultivator. General Pei, there's no need to use my brother against me, I'm not afraid of him. Pei Ming was enraged but couldn't do anything. Finally, he pointed at him. You've really done little General Pei in now. The white-clad cultivator swung his whisk wildly. It's little General Pei's own doing, this has nothing to do with me. Looking like he didn't want to continue to quarrel with Pei Ming, the white-clad cultivator ran away. Xie Lian thought Pei Ming might stick around to taunt him further, but he didn't and exited the hall willfully. It was actually the Crown Prince of Yang'an who remained. Xie Lian was curious, why did he stay? When Xie Lian approached, this guy had his eyes closed, fast asleep while standing. Xie Lian didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and gently tapped the young man's shoulders. Your Highness. Your Highness. Lang Qianchu woke with a jerk. What's happened? Nothing's happened. The conference is over, Xie Lian explained. Having just woken up, Lang Qianchu was still a little dazed and asked in confusion. Over? Just like that? What did we all discuss? I didn't hear anything. If you didn't hear anything, then never mind, Xie Lian said. It wasn't anything important anyway. Come now, time to go back. Oh. Lang Qianchu left, but when he reached the doors he looked back, still confused. Xie Lian waved at him with a smile. When finally everyone was gone, Xie Lian slowly turned around. Junwu had his hands behind his back and descended from the throne. The scimitar Yi Ming. Xie Lian straightened. So, what is going on? Junwu asked. Xie Lian looked at him, and kneeled. MXTX Author's Notes. In this text, to become a god, one must first become a hero, which is one who is special amongst mortals. Only a properly ascended mortal can become a heavenly official. How do their servants become proper officials? They have 2 options. First, they have to be adept at a particular skill, and enter either the martial or the literature rank. Second, they have to have the luck. If they have good luck, then there's a good chance. If they randomly find some spiritual potion on the side of the road, that works too. The officials in the middle court are those brought in by the upper court as generals or servants. Basically, if you're on good terms with the big guns, they can pull you up. Although not a full-fledged official, you're still part of the heavens. So there's all sorts of people. So say a heavenly official had a close relationship with you, or if they thought you have a bright future, they'll promote you first. As long as you have the skill and chance, you can become a big gun yourself too. End chapter.